Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Dharma Time. I am your host, the Dharma Guy, one and only. I think so, hopefully. It is Tuesday. What is today? Today is Tuesday the 19th. A couple days before Christmas. Hopefully everybody's getting ready for the holiday. I know us here down in Florida, it is a balmy, way too hot degrees at the moment. I was loving the cooler temperatures there for a little while. I think it was last week on the couch. Somebody commented and said that they were willing to switch weathers with us. And of course, the dope doctor over here was no. I, however, would be more than happy to switch up and take the cooler weather. Thank you very much. Anyways, let's do some housekeeping real quick. Make sure I get my thank yous in order. First thing I want to say is thank you to Retreat Premier Addiction Treatment Centers for sponsoring the network. Awesome place. And briefly, I'm going to talk about them just because we have personal relationships with them as well. They're not just people that we ask to stroke a check. I mean, they're actual facilities that we believe in, that we would send our people to. John Shooter is one of the representatives. He's a awesome guy. He's got a British accent, so of course everything he says sounds awesome. But then Tom Garofolo is another guy that we've interviewed quite a few times on the Couch Live. One of the best guests we've had. And the thing about them at Retreat is they just get it. They get how to take care of your loved ones. They believe in what they do. Really good, all-star facility. And the other one would be Journey Pure. And Journey Pure, I actually had the privilege of golfing with them a little bit at our last golf tournament at the Now Matters More Foundation. And they're awesome. They were such good people. Once again, they too really care about what they do. And so we're very proud to have them as sponsors for not only this show, but for the network as well. And then, of course, the Now Matters More Foundation, which I am the president of. We help individuals who are struggling with the disease of addiction and can't afford to get their treatment. We do our best to help scholarship some of that. At the very least, we point them in the best direction and get them where they need to be. And then, of course, we have Orange County Drug-Free Coalition. Been a supporter for a while. Awesome people. Carol Burkett, if you're listening, you're awesome. Everything you guys do down there is fantastic. In case you can't tell, I'm a little nasally today, so just apologize ahead of time. It's like the worst possible thing to have for radio, but hey, we'll make it work, right? One monkey don't stop the show. So I let's see what else. Make sure I got everything done. Okay. So I definitely I want to address a couple of questions that I've gotten. But first, I want to make sure you guys do understand, everybody who's listening. I am a one-man show, so by all means, I do love interacting with you guys and answering questions. I do my best to answer on Facebook Live as often as I can, mainly because it's kind of hard to keep my train of thought and read at the same time. But there's a few people who've reached out to me outside of the show hours and just ask some questions, and I'm gonna do my best to address those. The first one came to me. Well, actually, you know what? Let me back up for a second. For those of you who don't know, you can reach out to me through any of my social media. You just look up Trinity Phillips, the Dharma Guy, Dharma Time. It's all over the place. If you don't have social media and you still want to reach out, or if you feel more comfortable using email, you can do it at dharmatimeshow@gmail.com, and I should get that. Let me make sure it's correct. Yep, dharmatimeshow@gmail. So if you got any questions about anything we talk about, or you want to send a shout out, something like that, feel free to reach out. I love it when I interact with you guys. I love it when I can answer your questions. Take a sip of water here for a second. All right, that's much better. Anyways, so the first question I got, and I get this a lot, guys, a lot. It's one of the first things I do when running groups and doing things. I think I mentioned it on the first episode a couple weeks back. Whenever I go into a group type setting and I'm getting ready to talk about spirituality, typically there's like two. It's like a divide that happens, and one group of the population says, "Oh no, spirituality equals religion in my book. I'm atheist. I don't want to hear anything about that. I don't want to listen to what you have to say." And the other group says, "Hey, I've already got a religion that I practice. I don't need to hear anything else about it. I'm going to go to my corner of the room." And myself, being atheist, I kind of understand, and I get that concept. So one of the first things I try to do is explain to everybody that, this isn't a religion. It's more of a philosophy. And granted, this show isn't just Buddhism, but obviously that's the philosophy that I come from. And so that included with the other literature that I've read and I hang around copious amounts of therapists every day. So you just pick up stuff over the years and just my own personal experiences and so on and so forth. But obviously, I'm grounded very much so in the philosophy of Buddhism because it's helped me tremendously, and I've been able to help others with it as well. So, but having said that, the question I got was essentially, and this individual, I want to say I think they're kind of new to the religion aspect of things. I think that they've recently kind of found Christianity for themselves, and I think they're struggling with some stuff, or they're just trying to understand a little bit more. And so, the question that was asked to me was, can somebody be a Christian essentially and practice the Buddhist philosophy? And so the answer to that is yes, absolutely, 100%. Matter of fact, I know quite a few people who are practicing religion, whatever that religion may be. I myself have taught this to individuals who are Jewish, Muslim, Christian, other atheists. I don't think I've had anybody yet from some of the other religions that are out there, but absolutely you can. Mainly because in Buddhism, being the fact that it's just a philosophy, there is no deity. Like the Buddha himself, Siddhartha Gautama, wasn't a he's not like a god. He's just a regular guy. Think of him as a teacher, like a really smart teacher that you had at some point, who was just a little bit more experienced, figured some things out, and is dropping that knowledge on you. Granted, there are certain aspects of different types of Buddhism, like Mahayana and whatnot, who there's a little bit more of a religious undertone. That is not the direction I personally take when I'm teaching or how I practice. So, yes, you can absolutely practice Christianity and Buddhism at the same time, mainly because there's nothing in Christianity that's going to, in Buddhism, that's going to contradict anything in Christianity. In other words, Buddhism is not going to tell you to turn your back on God or Jesus or the teachings that you've learned and things of that nature. It's not going to tell you to go out there and be rude and mean to people. Quite the opposite. If anything, from what I've understood or seen over the years, is if you're in a religion, whatever that religion may be, Buddhism will do nothing but kind of reinforce some of those same kind of concepts. Because let's face it, regardless of what religion you follow or don't follow, or philosophy or that, they're all kind of the same, guys. They all basically have the same premise for the most part. There's just maybe different reasons or motivations, definitely different backstory, but the overall feel of what they're trying to get you to do as far as happiness and treating other people, it's all kind of the same concept. So it's just kind of what speaks to you and what doesn't speak to you. So I hope that answered your question. By all means, if it didn't, feel free to reach out again and I'll readdress it. And so before I get on to today's actual topic that I was going to discuss, I had another individual that I know reach out to me via social media and ask me another question today, and it was an excellent question actually. Give me 1 second, another drink here. Gotta love some H2O, man. I'm one of those weird people that love water, and when I'm sick, water's even better, I guess. Anyways, so I'm going to do a show in the coming weeks. I don't know the exact date yet, but it's coming. And it's probably one of my more intense shows, and it might be like a couple-parter. My two most intense topics when I've been running groups over the years is forgiveness and sexuality. Forgiveness being the idea of forgiving other people as well as yourself. And then, of course, sexuality, the idea of sexuality, the component of suffering that's associated with that. Those are my two hardest ones, mainly because when it comes to forgiveness, just even right now, everybody who's listening, just the word forgiveness typically makes people think of something that's been done to them that they just simply couldn't forgive anybody for, or something they've done in the past to other people or themselves that they can't forgive themselves for. And it's usually the absolute worst possible one that they can come up with. And their immediate thought is, how can I forgive that or whatever? And I'm usually the one in the corner saying, yeah, you do need to forgive that. So we'll address that. And the other one, obviously, is sexuality. Like I said, there's a certain amount of suffering that's associated with that. Not going to get into all that today. That's a whole show by itself. I bring that up, though, because the gentleman who reached out to me today via social media had a very interesting question. And I'm going to do my best to stay as vague as I can, only just to protect his anonymity and whatnot, so that way you guys feel comfortable asking questions. But he owns a business. And this business is a very eccentric business. It's a very focused business, essentially. Meaning it's not something you would just randomly go do one day. it's something you typically kind of plan out, or you have an idea that you want to go into this place. And uh, very successful business, been there for a long time, but apparently somebody opened a business across the street from him that essentially does the exact same thing, and he's having a hard time forgiving this person. He's getting fired up, and I think a lot of you just instantly hearing this probably agree or probably understand it. I know for me, for years prior to this philosophy, even I would totally be in that same boat. I would be just as upset, and even prior to going on air, I was talking to my producer over here, Dope Doctor, who, mind you, is still dressed down, by the way, for those of you who watch Couch Live. He's on like a streak right now. Anyways, so I would have had the same thoughts. I would have been just as bothered by it. And I'm not saying that it's a cool thing, but what I will say to help with forgiveness, and I encourage you absolutely to continue to watch the show, and at some point I will dedicate a whole entire, like I said, probably a series of shows on forgiveness and have some guests and whatnot, just because it's such a deep and integral part of what we do here. But just to briefly touch on it, we have to forgive in the sense of first of all, forgiveness isn't for that person, right? Your forgiveness isn't for the individual who opened the shop, because to be honest with you, that person across the street probably doesn't care. They're not sitting at home thinking, "Oh gosh, my back hurts. Somebody must not be forgiving me at the moment." They don't care. Their life is going on as is. They've got their own struggles, their own issues that they're worried about. So at the end of the day, forgiveness is for you, not for them. Because without forgiving, we carry that weight with us. It's like an anchor. It starts to kind of weigh us down, and it affects every decision that we make. Because every decision that we make and all of our thought process is going to be centered around that poison that we're holding in, that angst, right? And part of what makes it easier to forgive, right, other than knowing it is for yourself, is by not forgiving or by even being mad in the first place, you're kind of filling in a narrative that you don't really know. In other words, you're taking it personal. You're thinking that this person, has the same moral conviction that you have. This person has the same, value system that you have. And they basically said, hey, screw the value system, screw him. I'm going to open up right across the street. And so I would be very, very careful in trying to fill in that narrative, because you don't know. Just to be devil's advocate here, what could have happened, let's say this person's, their dream their entire life was to open up this particular type of the business. And when it came down to it, they're looking all over town, and the only place that they can maybe afford, or the only place that was open, or what other, extenuating circumstance was present, that was it. That was the only location they could have. So it was either open up here, or you can't open up at all. He's going to open up there. It's just part of it. That's what he's going to do. And in that scenario, has absolutely nothing to do with you or how you're feeling. And I think that's part of where the forgiveness comes into play, is we have to understand that we don't know. We can't fill in both sides of the scenario here. We can't create that narrative thinking we understand what the other person's thinking. Much, much easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. I myself that was one of the things I struggled with early on in my life. And by all means, I will share a lot more about this in my forgiveness shows. But one of the biggest things I struggled with was forgiveness of other people as well as myself. And that's why I take it so seriously now when I have shows, when I have groups and whatnot. It's because it really is it's that paramount. So first of all, we have to forgive. But like I said, it's just a filling into that narrative that I think gets us in trouble. We have to stop assuming we know what the other person's thinking, what they're doing, how they're feeling, or why they're making decisions. We can't assume that they have the same value system that we have. And not only that, the Dope Doctor over here kind of, had an interesting perspective that I didn't necessarily think of right away when I was talking to him about it. He was even saying, it's one of the best compliments. In other words, since it's the same type of a business, they're going to attract even more individuals who are looking for that type of a business in that particular area. So in a sense, you could feed off of that business as well. I know for myself, being a customer of businesses, it wouldn't affect me either way. Like I'm loyal to who I'm loyal to, and I think most people are going to do the same thing. So I think that, and I don't know if this helps. By all means, feel free to reach out again. We can kind of continue some dialogue via the social media. I would love to continue to make sure that you have an understanding, because I know what it's like to hold on to some of that, and I don't want that for you or anybody else for that matter. So, anyways, and once again, for anybody else who is listening, by all means, feel free to reach out. You can send it to any of my social media. You can send it to the email, dharmatimeshow@gmail.com. Also, my YouTube channel is finally up. I know Marissa kind of gave me some crap last night, but I only had one subscriber. I'm getting there. I just put it out there. But by all means, go check it out. When you go to youtube.com, just look up Dharma Time. It's brand new. I just put it out. We're putting our episodes up there, so anybody who misses this, or if you want to watch the video, if you want to share it with others, that's probably the best way to do it. And I'll continue to put other content as well. But very excited about it. I'm looking forward to it and kind of watching that grow, I guess. And by the way, I don't know if y'all noticed, I got a new logo. Got a new logo for Dharma Time. Pretty excited about that. It's kind of like a side profile for the symbol that's on the side. For those of you who already seen it, there's actually a story behind that. The symbol on the side is called I think it's called a unalome, and I'm probably screwing that word up, and I apologize to anybody who knows the correct pronunciation, but I think it's called an unalome. And essentially what that is, it's a description essentially of the path to enlightenment. Right? Enlightenment is obviously where anybody who's trying to get there through this path. Enlightenment is the point where you no longer suffer, and it's kind of in the business sense. If anybody's ever seen those memes or gifs or whatever that are out there that says what I thought success was going to be, and it's a straight line from you to success, and this is what it really is, and it's a line that's scribbled all over the place and it finally ends at success. Well, it's the same kind of concept. So if you look at the logo, it has. Basically, at the bottom of it is really thick and circular, and then as you're going through the process of trying to find enlightenment, it kind of goes all over the place and ends up to the lotus flower at the top. And the lotus flower being enlightenment, or in this case, I use the blue one, so that's wisdom. But a very, very cool logo. I'm very excited about that. Now I have one for myself and one for the show. Got to keep hydrated, guys. It's good stuff. Anyways, so that brings us to our topic for today. Let me make sure I'm on target here. So the topic today, for those of you who read or saw on my social media, is going to be about we cause our own suffering. Now, I need to give a little bit of background on that prior to just jumping right in. We cause our own suffering needs to first have the foundation of understanding what we talked about last week, and that is pain is a part of life, right? And for those of you who don't know, what I've been talking about thus far is the four truths, the four noble truths in the philosophy of Buddhism. The first one being pain is a part of life. And we discussed last week that pain, for the purposes of what we discuss, is essentially the things that happen in our lives that we find unsatisfactory. The waking up late, or the in my case, for instance, at the moment, the medical conditions and stuff, running the traffic, or in this gentleman's case, the business opening up from across the street from him. Pain is just a part of life. It's going to happen. It's going to take place. And there's nothing we can do about that. That's just, as long as you're a human being, you're going to experience pain in your life. Now, so this week, we're going to talk about the suffering, because that's what we do to ourselves. And that's something that I can help you with. Pain, I can't help you with, and nobody else really can either. If anybody comes to you and says, hey, I can help you get rid of all that pain, run as far as you can. They're selling you some snake oil. However, though, suffering, we can do something about, because that's the stuff that we do to ourselves, right? So the pain is just the act that took place. The suffering is the mental things that happen afterwards that we just can't let it go, right? It would be the lack of forgiveness, for instance, or the angst that we have, the anger, the frustration, the rage, all the stuff that comes with the painful act that happened. That suffering is what we do to ourselves. And so, the idea, the overall premise, so to give you the actual verbiage, I guess, of the four truths, the second one being we cause our own suffering through our aversion to the bad and our clinging to the good. So we'll start with the aversion to the bad. The aversion to the bad is we don't want to feel anything negative. We don't want to feel anything bad. We don't want to feel anything that is uncomfortable or painful or not what we wanted it to be, essentially, in our lives. So we spend all day long just trying to avoid all these little fires around us, just trying to avoid anything that makes us feel uncomfortable or icky or whatever adjective you want to put to it. And the problem with that is it's kind of a futile attempt, right? If I told anybody out here to go outside and, pick up a car over your head with one hand, I think most people probably wouldn't even try it. They wouldn't even attempt it, mainly because you understand consciously that it's not even possible. You're not going to pick up a car with one hand over your head. So you wouldn't attempt it. And yet we kind of do the same thing when it comes to trying to get rid of pain. Because as we discussed in the first truth, pain is a part of life. Nothing you're going to do is going to get rid of that. So trying to get rid of it is a futile attempt. It's going to do nothing but cause you frustration and angst. Because what'll end up happening is you do your best all day long to get rid of any pain and not feel it. Inevitably, something happens, and then you start to sit back and think, man, what's wrong with me? Why am I going through this? Why am I experiencing this pain? Why is this happening to me? And that's where this downward spiral starts to come. That's where the suffering comes into play. Because it's not happening to you. It's happening, you're experiencing it, but it's not happening to you. Don't personalize it. Excuse me. And so, they try to avoid the pain. It's never going to happen. It's impossible, and that's what causes some of your suffering. Because your suffering isn't going to revolve around whatever the painful experience was. It's going to revolve around your inability to control it, your inability to make it less, essentially. And so that's where the pain or the suffering starts to come into play. Now, the other half of that is the clinging to the good stuff. That's where I think where a lot of people can relate to. That's where we start to get in trouble, in the sense of we always confuse pleasure with happiness, right? We always think, when I sit in a room, I always ask a lot of people in my group, like, what makes you happy? And everybody goes around the room and they start to give me the standard answers, right? They always give me, I don't know, like friends, family, and my dog. Depending on what group I'm in, there's always somebody smart in the back that wants to yell out weed or sex, But bottom line is, it's usually the same kind of answers that I get. And the problem with that is every single one of those is pleasure. And what I mean is every single one of those can go away. They don't last forever. And so let's say family, because I think that's a standard go-to answer. So essentially, when you say that family makes me happy, which I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, by the way. I'm just trying to give you some truth here. And so when you say family makes me happy, what you're essentially saying is, I don't care what the universe or, if you're religious, God or whatever, I don't care what your plans and thoughts are. I need this to be happy. Well, we don't have that kind of control, right? It's kind of conceited to think you can control the universe or life or God or whatever plans that are out there. So what you're saying is, if the universe or God doesn't give me exactly what it is I think I need, well, I'm just not going to be happy. It's not going to happen. And I think that's where we need to have some truth given to us, because we don't have that sort of control. And with family, they go away, guys. No matter how much joy they bring you and how much you love them or whatever, family goes away. Sometimes family passes away. Sometimes they move away. Sometimes, things happen and you stop talking to one another. And so then what happens? You're just going to be unhappy for the rest of your entire life. It's impossible to be happy at that point. And so I think that's one of the first things we have to do is we have to stop confusing pleasure with happiness. Because the other thing about pleasure is no matter how good it feels, no matter how great it is, it always stops. So an example would be a couple of them, actually. So we could all probably relate to having, a toy or an object that we want so bad. And we keep thinking, if I'll be happy, or if I get this, I'll be happy. I know when I was a kid, I wanted a PlayStation so bad. And I just knew that if I got this PlayStation, I'd be so happy. And so inevitably, like everybody else, I got whatever that object would be. Whether I got it myself or somebody got it for me, it was in my possession. And at first, it was awesome. It was great. It was the greatest thing ever. But then what happens after like a couple weeks, a couple months, maybe 6 months, 7 months? Yeah, it's no longer as cool anymore. It's lost its appeal. It's lost its luster. Now I'm on to the next one. The next thing came out, or the next object, or whatever it may be. I'm guilty of, back in the day, I have cars that I enjoy, like favorite cars or whatever. And I used to see cars that I would like. And I would look inside the window or whatever, and I would see, McDonald's wrappers or something all over the floorboard, and it was just dirty and stuff. And I'd say, man, how can I not take care of that car? If it was my car, I would never do that. Yeah, you would. Over time. When you first get it, it's the greatest car you've ever had in your life. After a while, it just becomes a car. It's just a car. It's just something you drive around in. It gets you from point A to point B. Because eventually you're going to want the newer car, or something's going to break on that car, and you're going to want something else. And so that's what I mean by whatever, these materialistic things, essentially, that we think cause happiness. It's actually more along the lines of pleasure. And the problem with pleasure is it stops. And so this idea that we can avoid things that we don't like, or constantly surround ourselves with pleasure all the time, it's a recipe for disaster, and that's what causes our suffering. And we're as human beings, we're excellent. We're so good at lying to ourselves, right? As much as we think that we're these honest little people walking around, we lie more to ourselves than anybody else out there. And an example would be, oh, I don't know. We convince ourselves like I said, this next thing's going to make me happy, and we don't realize that over time it's not going to, even though we think, hey, this is it, this is the end all be all. But another example I would say is if somebody comes up to you and you're upset, you're mad, you're angry, something just took place, and somebody would walk up and you say, hey, why are you mad? Why are you so angry? You're going to lie to yourself and say, oh, well, it's this person, it's this thing, it's this situation, this environment, whatever it may be, that caused you to be angry. And I'm going to come up in the room and say, no, it's not. What caused you to be angry was your expectation for it to be different. And that's why we have to start to learn to accept things as they are and not as we want them to be. That's a hard thing, though. Those are fighting words right there for a lot of people, man. Try to go up to somebody who's suffering and tell them it's their fault. Example would be a flat tire, too. Flat tire, I used this last week, I believe, but, there was years ago, there was a time in my life where if I would have walked out and saw that I had a flat tire, hell would have come to earth. I would have lost my mind. I would have been so mad. I would have been punching and kicking things. I would have been so furious. It would have been, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. Now I got to spend money, ruin my whole day. I would have had a million excuses, a million reasons why that made me so angry. And had somebody walked up to me and says, why are you so mad? Trust me, I would have made sure I told them exactly why I was so mad. But in all reality, where I'm at now in my life and on the path, what I'm trying to get you guys to understand is it has nothing to do with the flat tire. It was the fact that I walked out the door expecting it to not be flat. And that's the problem. Wanting things is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with wanting things, having goals, trying to strive to achieve things. But having to have something, that's where the problem comes into play. When your happiness or your future is dictated upon what you can and can't have in front of you, that's where we start to run into problems. So for me, in the flat tire scenario, what caused me my problems, what caused my suffering, what caused all that mental anguish to take place had nothing to do with the flat tire. It has to do with when I wake up in the morning, and everybody does this, when I wake up in the morning, I have in my head what I think my day should look like. I have this little box, and inside this box is how everybody should treat me, how I should feel, what should happen to me today, what time I should arrive at work, or whatever it may be. All these little things are contained within this little box. And then the problem is life starts to kind of say, all right, I see your plan, and I don't really care. And it starts to do all sorts of things outside of that box. And then you spend the rest of your day trying to, put all these fires out and put things back into the box. And that's where the suffering comes in, because you're like, oh, why is this happening to me? And, oh, this isn't fair. And if I would have done this, and if I would have done that. And it's just simply not the case. And that's what we cause our own suffering. And we have to stop blaming other people for it. It's on us. Now, that doesn't mean that, there's not, displeasurable things that take place in our life. That doesn't mean that there's things that, happen to me on a daily basis that I don't like, that cause me frustration or whatever it may be. The difference is on how we handle that. So I'm not saying that we should strive to have this perfect life, that we should walk out there and say, my life is great and awesome all day, every day. I have no problems. That's just ridiculous. But we can choose how we respond to those problems. And the example that I think I used it last week as well, and I use it just because it's such a profound one, is we've all seen or heard, movies, whatever it may be, of that the GI that comes back from war that lost both their legs or something, and then they go through rehab, and they do what they got to do, and then the one rehab guy, the one guy outside of rehab is just angry and bitter at the world, and he's had this bad thing happen to him that he hates, right, and there's no denying the fact that that's a painful experience, both literally and figuratively, right? It's painful losing limbs, but it's also painful in the sense of, why did this happen? It sucks. It's really inhibited me from doing the things that I wanted to do, and so on and so forth. But the other guy kind of lost the same exact legs that he lost, and both of them, he goes out of rehab. But when he gets done, he tries to build on that. He opens up a motivational speaking company or something. He tries to inspire other people, or he tries to be the first guy with no legs to climb a mountain, or whatever it may be, whatever his motivation is. And the difference is those two people are dealing with the exact same pain, but one's suffering from it and one's not. And the suffering is the waking up every day, just being mad at the world and being angry and frustrated and just get off my lawn, that guy. And the other guy is dealing with the pain as well, but he's got a different mentality from it. He's just accepted it for what it is. Because at the end of the day, no matter how frustrated and mad he gets and angry he gets, He's going to wake up tomorrow and his legs aren't going to be there. And that's what we all have to do in life, is we have to wake up tomorrow and realize tomorrow's not going to be the day that you have no pain. Tomorrow's not going to be the day where the universe smiles upon you and every single thing goes your way. So it's not a matter of if something painful is going to take place. It's a matter of when. It will happen. There's varying degrees of that, obviously. But it's that acceptance is where we need to be. We need to accept the fact that life is what life is. And that's where, kind of a little anecdote here. This morning, I asked my 13-year-old when I was on the way, drop her off to school, and I told her what the show today was going to be about. And because I was trying to figure out different ways of explaining it and kind of getting it across, because it is such a profound truth to put out there, and it's such a hard thing for a lot of people to wrap their head around. And so I was asking her what her thoughts were, and it was very profound actually what she said. She said to me that when I asked her, I said, "Hey, if I told you caused your own suffering, what does that mean to you?" And at 13, she looked at me. She's like, "Well, yeah, I mean, because if something bad happens, it's up to me to choose to find a negative in it. It's up to me to be angry and upset and frustrated about it. Nothing out there or nobody out there can control how I feel. It's up to me." Which, first of all, Skylar, if you're hearing that, kudos to you, man. It's awesome at 13 that you're already on that path. I'm so proud of you. Having said that, it's a lot easier said than done. I think we can all relate to that. I think we all understand that concept, but in the middle of it is very, very hard to do. And but she's right on track. The other anecdotal story, and my mom's gonna hate me for this one. And Mom, if you're listening, sorry. I'll hear about it later. Don't worry. So here's an example. All right, so I have 4 kids at the house. Yes, I have a circuit at the house. 4 kids, ages 6 to 17, right? And in addition to those 4 kids, I have 2 dogs. I have a 13-pound Jack Russell. It's for the kids. Don't judge. I have a 13-pound Jack Russell, and he's a pain. He's got nothing but energy. And then, of course, I have a 70-pound or 70-plus pound pit bull. And as big and bad as he is, he's just a big baby. Anyways, so I reached out to my mom. She lives a few miles from me. And oftentimes when we have things to do that aren't conducive to lugging around 4 kids, I have my mom come by and help out and watch them for various purposes. And so every time she comes to my house, there was a while there where her knee was really, really bad. She has some medical concerns and her knee was hurting a lot. It still hurts, I guess, but not as bad as it used to. And so when she would come to my house, she would open the door, and both my dogs, Apollo and Rocky, would come up and try to jump on her, lick her, kiss her, just be all over her essentially. And what would happen is it was very uncomfortable for her because she had knee problems. It would hurt. She's not 19 anymore, so dealing with 2 dogs, especially a 70-pounder, it can be cumbersome. And so my mom would lose her mind. She would just get really, really upset and really angry. And I think most people can relate to this. I think most people understand. If you're in pain, it hurts, it's happening, and you're like, hey, get these stupid dogs off me, whatever. But every single day, she would come to the house to do this. Before she opens the door, in her mind, she was just like, oh, okay, I'm going to open the door, and the dogs won't do what they're doing. And when they did, she would get so upset, and she would get mad at the dogs. And so I ask you as the audience right now, and you don't have to answer per se, but just rhetorically, who's the wrong individual, I guess. I don't want to use that word, but who's the unskillful individual in that situation? The dogs or the person expecting the dogs to not act like dogs? And that's the thing. The dogs weren't doing anything other than what dogs do. The dogs were just behaving like dogs. She was the one that was expecting it every single day to be different than it was the day before. And so and if you ask her, why are you mad? It's these stupid dogs. I'm going to argue that you were mad because you were expecting something different than what was happening. You weren't just accepting the fact that these dogs love me and they care for me. They're going to try to jump on me. It is what it is. Now, she's since gotten better. And Mom, if you're listening to me, I know I'm putting it out there. But I say it because I think it's something we could all relate to. We all have that dog in our life, right? Not dog specifically, but we all have that person, that situation, that coworker, that gadget that we can't get to work, whatever it may be, that just continuously pisses us off, frustrates us, hurts our feelings, whatever it may be. And it's important to understand that it's us that's causing our suffering. It's not the other thing. You are causing your suffering with your inability to see it for what it truly is. Just something new to adapt to. And that's kind of where it takes me to finish the story about my 13-year-old, what she said. When she finished that statement, she said another one right afterwards. And for me, it's a statement that a lot of people use. The other parts of what I do are in the addiction recovery world, and I hear this a lot in there. And I personally have a slight issue with it, and that is trying to find the positive in everything. So what she was saying was that even when bad things happen, you can find the positive in it and turn it into something good, as opposed to turning it into something negative and being upset about it. And in the idea of that, the premise of it, I understand. Hold on. More water. So I understand the concept of trying to turn a negative into a positive, but the reason why I don't like that is I don't like the idea of labeling stuff. Because when you start to label something good or bad, that's when I think it makes it harder to not suffer in this world, right? Because we all we all suffer regardless, unless you've reached enlightenment, which if you have, kudos to you, that's awesome. We all suffer, we all experience it, and so I think by deeming things positive and negative or trying to find the positive in something, I think it sets us up for more suffering in the sense of why label it? Why not just call it what it is? It's just a new fact that I have to adapt to now. It's not necessarily negative. It's not positive. It just is. It's just something, and my shirt says it is what it is. It's just something we have to adapt to. Because the problem with searching for the positive in everything, to me, that just reinforces this idea of clinging to the positive. Yeah, I got to make everything positive. And what happens when something so horrific takes place that you don't have the ability to turn that into a positive? Like what happens if one of your children dies or something? Good luck trying to find a positive in that one. And so I think that's where we kind of need to get rid of this idea, this concept that there is an all positive thing out there. There's an all positive mentality that we can get to. That's just complete BS, man. Not everything is positive. Not everything has a positive spin to it. Sometimes things just are. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's where we need to get to. That's where the acceptance comes into play. We have to accept life as how it is, not how we want it to be. So we have to accept the fact that sometimes things are going to happen that fall within what we want to happen, and then sometimes the things happen that don't fall within what we want to happen. Just because it doesn't fall into what I wanted to happen doesn't mean it's necessarily negative. It just means it didn't fit within what I wanted it to fit into. It just means it went the other way, which is no big deal. I just have to adapt now. And I think that's, as a father who has kids, I think it's a common thing for us to try to shield our kids from bad things or shield them from experiencing stuff that we don't want them to experience. And to an extent, I 100% agree with that. However, I also think that we're doing them a disservice because by doing that, we're not giving them the coping skills. We're not teaching them to understand that sometimes that's going to happen. Sometimes life is going to give you some things that you don't really care for. And we're not giving them the tools then to accept that and deal with it. And then when they get older, they come to one of my classes to learn how to be happy. And so I think what I'm trying to do now is give that information out there. I see a few people commenting. I'm going to take a minute to look. I see some people commenting on Facebook Live. I see my sister actually expecting a different result from doing the same thing. I used to argue that was the definition of insanity, but the dope doctors corrected me numerous times and says that's just human behavior. But I agree with you 100%. We do that a lot. We constantly look at something and the thing I like to say to modify that, I guess, is we can't use the same thinking that got us into the problem to get us out of the problem. The thinking that we had that got us in there, we're going to have to readjust that and think of a different way to get us out.
Marissa also said, what you resist persists.
Yes, I see that. And absolutely, I agree. Theoretically, if you will, on a more philosophical basis, that's life, right? Life has a tendency of teaching us some lessons. And I've noticed in my own life that the more I've tried to run away from certain lessons and the more I've tried not to learn certain things, the more life has put it front and center and made sure I learn it. And for me, that's where that's where a lot of my suffering came from. A lot of my suffering was blaming everybody for everything. I grew up and I blamed my family. I blamed my lack of on all my problems. I blamed them for why I was mad, why I was this, and everything else. And then once I got past all that, I still had the suffering because, I still had issues in my life. I still had things taking place that I couldn't accept the fact that this is just, it happens. It's not a big deal. And I think that once again, that's where people get into trouble. Is we spend all this time trying to avoid pain and chase pleasure. And I can tell you right now, it can't happen that way. You're never going to find this eternal fountain of pleasure that just never ending. It's going to end, and that's what sucks, right? And when I work in the addiction field, those people are masters at trying to run from pain and trying to disguise it from something, and they'll be the first to tell you it doesn't exist. It can't happen. It leads you down a hole that you don't want to be in. And so this idea that there is this magical thing to say, this magical thing to do that's going to get rid of our pain, that's a never-ending fight that I can tell you right now, who's somebody who's lived it, and speak to lots of others who live it every day. It's exhausting, and it's not really rewarding at all because it never happens. No matter how hard you try, life is always going to give you another painful event, whatever it may be. Take another drink, guys. I'm losing my voice today. It sucks. There we go. Anyways, so kind of to bring it in a little bit, once again, the first truth, and I'll probably go into the third one a little bit. I think I got time. So the first truth is pain is a part of life. We got to understand this concept that no matter what we do, no matter what decisions we make, life is always going to give us new things that we don't necessarily agree with. The second one is learning how to accept that. And a great story that was told to me in one of the sessions I was in. There was a gentleman, when I went around and asked everybody what makes you happy, he sat back and he painted this really, really specific picture. Actually, it was a very beautiful moment. It was his family owned like a house or something on a lake out in Carolina, and I've told the story numerous times just because it's such an impactful one. But they own a house like on a lake in the Carolinas, I think, and he explained happiness to me. What to him was sitting on the front porch of this house in a rocking chair, the breeze kicking right outside the lake, like a nice breezy kind of summer day, and just chilling and relaxing. Very, very peaceful and tranquil kind of scene he painted for me. And he said to me that was happiness to him. That made him happy. And so for me, what I said back to him was, that sounds like pleasure. Because, in that moment, the house could have been bigger. The rocking chair could have been more comfortable. The lake could have been bigger. The breeze could have been 1 degree, hotter or colder. You could have had more money in your bank account. There's probably other things in your life taking place at that time that could have been different. That would have been more advantageous for you. But the key is you weren't thinking of any of those things at that moment. In that moment, you were content. And at the end of the day, that's all happiness really is. Happiness is basically just that mindset, that contentment that we have to where I'm good. Doesn't mean that I don't have issues and problems in my life. It doesn't mean that there's not things in my life that could be better or worse. It doesn't mean that I don't have any goals or I'm not trying to change certain things. It just means that I'm good. I understand and realize there's things in my life that I don't care about, and I'm willing to accept that and just adapt. That's essentially what I'm talking about. And we all have those moments. Like I said last week, we all have those moments, man. For some people, it's your morning drive. For some people, it's your breakfast in the morning. For some people, it's chilling out on the couch at night and watching your favorite show and just relaxing. The point being is that moment where you're kind of just sitting down, relaxing, and or whatever it is that makes you happy, and you're not thinking of anything other than just in that moment you're being present and you're just really content. That's happiness, guys. That's what we're all trying to achieve. That's what this whole path gets you to. This path isn't going to make your life better. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not going to take away your problems. I'm not going to teach you how to get rid of your problems. But I can teach you how to just accept it for what it is, not what you want it to be. Learn back and just say, you know what, I'm good. Yeah, there's stuff. I'm good, though. I'm all right. And that's that peace. And so for me, I'll go ahead and jump in on the third one because I got it roughly 10 minutes here or so. So I'll do my best to cover the third one. The third truth is you don't have to suffer. And that's the cool part, right? So the first one is pain is a part of life. Second one is you cause your own suffering. Third one is you don't have to. There is a path to follow that doesn't lead us to suffering. And to me, that's got to be the most liberating and amazing thing I've ever heard in my life. Even now, telling it for probably the 50,000th time I've told it, I still get goosebumps at the moment. Because to me, that was such an earth-shattering kind of concept. I've taught that particular truth to everybody from ages like 11, 12, all the way up to the 70s, and never once have I had anybody come out and tell me they've heard that before. And to me, I think that's a huge disservice, man. It's such a foreign concept that people hear and they're like, what? I don't have to suffer. And they immediately start thinking of all the things the bad stuff um, that they've experienced or whatever. Like, well, how can I not suffer from? I'm not saying that you have to like it. I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I'm saying you don't have to suffer from it. And to me, that is the most amazing thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. Because being the anti-authority, the rebellious individual that I am, uh, I like the idea of me saying, that's my way of saying, like, screw you to the universe, right? Hey, universe, you can throw pain towards me. You can throw bills. You can throw car accidents. You can throw whatever, all the laundry list of things that we don't like. You can throw all that my way. There's nothing I can do about that. But the one thing you cannot make me do is you cannot make me suffer. That's me. That's my perspective. That's my outlook. I control that. And so if I'm suffering, you won. And boy, let me tell you, I'm a competitive individual and I hate to lose. So for me, the idea that I control my suffering is such an amazing concept. That is literally my absolute favorite truth. That was the most liberating thing I've ever heard in my life, was to hear that I don't have to do these things. And that's the earth-shattering thing a lot of people have to kind of finally get, and that is we associate certain feelings and certain thoughts and certain outcomes to specific events, and we just associate them and think that that just has to happen. You know, if this takes place, then I have to do this. If I got a flat tire, I have to be mad. If this person opens up a business across the street from me, that's ridiculous, that's disrespectful, I have to get mad. No, you don't. You can. It's totally your choice. Nobody's going to make you not do it. I'm just saying that comes with some suffering. If you don't want to feel that suffering, then the truth of the matter is only you can control that. And that's, to me, what this path gives, is that liberating idea. You know, on one hand, you know, people hear that and say you cause your own suffering. They might get agitated. Like, what do you mean I'm doing this to myself, right? But I choose to look at it in more liberating thing, because if I'm causing all my own problems, then what does that mean? That means I can stop all my problems. I control that. It's not my environment. It's not the people around me. It's not my situation. It's me. It's my, and I'm not saying that you can make your life better. I'm saying you can make your suffering better. So even though I can't change my circumstances, I can change how I view those circumstances. And that is still my favorite truth of all time, is the third one, is you don't have to suffer. It's such a remarkable concept, I think, that a lot of people could really, really benefit from, which is why we're doing the show. Welcome to Dharma Time. Anyways, so after spending years of teaching this, that is something that kind of where we fall into place, right? Or where we land, and that is people hear the first truth, and I think for the most part, everybody gets that. We all understand that you know, there's things in life that we can't control. There's things in life that are going to upset us. There's things in life that just don't go the way we want them to go. I think that's a given. I think we all understand that. The second truth that we talked about today for the most part, and that is you cause your own suffering through aversion to pain and a clinging to good. Sometimes people have a harder time fully wrapping their heads around that one, especially in the beginning. As you go further along and as you learn more, it's easier to understand. But then they get to the third one, and they hear that you don't have to suffer, and that's pretty much like, oh, that's awesome. How do I do that? You know, like, that's great. I love the idea that there is a path. What is that path, and how do I do it? And then that would be the fourth truth and the final truth, and that is the path, the way. And that would be the eightfold path. And we'll talk more about that next week, because we have nowhere near enough time to get into it today. But the eightfold path is essentially that path that we walk. And all that path is, and once again, it's a pretty word, and it's a lot of jargon when it comes to the philosophy. But all it really is just the skills that we develop in ourselves that help us deal with things in a manner that doesn't cause suffering. That's really all it is. It's just dealing with things in a more skillful way. And so for the gentleman who asked me earlier if you can practice Christianity while practicing Buddhism, absolutely, because all this does is just reinforce those tools that you are already given, and then rewords them in a way that might be easier for some people to kind of grasp or follow. And so that path is once again, it's the skills that we develop in ourselves that help us deal with things skillfully. In other words, if I walk out today and I go down and I get in the beast to go home, and there's a flat tire, I have the skills in my life now to not let that affect me. I have the skills now to not go downstairs and just lose my mind and be like, oh my gosh, I got a flat tire, this is crazy. Start kicking things and getting mad and just start going over all the reasons why this is the worst thing that could have happened today. and cause all this suffering, and then treat everybody around me with disdain for the rest of the day because I had a flat tire, which is none of their fault, but it doesn't matter because that's the problem with lack of forgiveness. That's the problem with suffering, is it doesn't just affect you. It affects everybody around you. It affects all of your decision making. It's like this nasty energy that gets started, and it ends up at the end of the day somebody going home and kicking a dog, right? Like you go to the gas station to get it, and you're upset and you're angry, and then you pass that negative energy onto that person, and then they pass it on to the next, and so on and so forth. And so we don't have to do those types of things, right? And so, that's all the way is essentially is the skills, because it's nice to educate ourselves. It's nice to understand that pain is going to be a part of life. It's nice to understand that we cause our own suffering. It's nice to know that we don't have to. But what people really care about is how do I apply all these things? These are some fantastic stuff, but I think you're full of it until you tell me how to do it. So that's what we're going to get into, starting next week and in the coming weeks. But thank you again for all the questions. Let me see. I see Dharma guy over here commenting. He's commenting, was it the Third Truth? Very cool. Cindy, thank you for listening.
Wait, did you just say the Dharma guy commenting?
Did I say the Dharma guy?
Yeah, you did.
I probably did. Hey, I'm sick, man. I'm allowed to make some mistakes.
I quoted you.
You did.
That's what it was. The
Okay.
dope doctor quoted the Dharma guy.
Nice. I think that's a first, actually. That's nice. I can get used to that. Anyways, once again, put some stuff out there. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. If you have any questions, I do my best work when I can answer questions. When you have specific instances or things that you're going through that you're curious on how to handle it in a more skillful way, how to apply this philosophy or this path to what you're currently going through. I'm a tool. I'm here to be used, man. So by all means, yeah, I know I'm not a tool in that sense. Not a tool in your toolbox, meaning, you get out of it what you put into it. So by all means, if you have questions or comments, things that you're curious about, things that you want to know about, feel free to reach out. You could do it in any of the social media. You could do it through email, dharmatimeshow@gmail.com. The YouTube channel is up. By all means, go check that out. All these episodes will be on there. I'll do my best to put some other videos and just little things here and out to put in there. And thank you for Jake Atkins again for this freaking awesome theme song, dude. I love that every time I hear it. And thank you for Bond. I cannot pronounce your last name, but thank you, Bond, for the logo. You do fantastic work. Appreciate that. I think that's all I got, man. I think it's time to start wrapping up.
What's after this show?
What is after this show?
I think it's Recovery Radio.
Recovery
right?
Radio, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got Recovery Radio. And then after that is the Lemon Squeeze Show, which I will say I heard a couple minutes of the Lemon Squeeze Show the other day, and it was JoJo Knows confessing to something that I thought was very interesting. She didn't want to confess at first, but Constance kind of held her feet to the fire a little bit, made her confess. I'm not gonna put her business out there. Listen to the show, and she puts her own business out there. But it was an awesome moment. And I've talked to a few people who've heard the Lemon Squeeze Show. It's actually really funny, man. It's a really cool kind of dynamic that they have. The topics that they go over are relatable to everybody, not just, guys. I think that, if you listen to some of the other shows that we have on the station, mine is got a little bit more of a serious undertone because it's trying to help you deal with some issues and problems. The Couch Live, we do our best to keep it light, but it's, it's centered around addiction recovery. Whereas the Lemon Squeeze, I think, offers something for everybody. It has some seriousness to it. It has some lightheartedness to it. So if you haven't checked them out, by all means, they have a YouTube channel as well. I believe it's called Lemon Squeeze Show. And you can find It's JoJo Knows on Instagram, and Constance B as well. Great stuff. Recovery Radio, he's an awesome guy, professional. That's obviously about recovery. I definitely would suggest tuning into that as well.
It's out of Philadelphia, actually.
It is
Steve Martirano's out of Philadelphia.
I always mess up his last name. I always butcher that, so I don't even try to say it because I'm not going to be that guy. Anyways, so as a wrap-up, I think that, going through life, we're all doing the best we can, but never stop trying to be better. See ya.